Today's game is Blood and Dust by Dark City Games. If you watch my videos, you probably know that I have played a number of titles in the catalog of Dark City Games. I've been really enjoying these pre-programmed mini adventures that can be played solitaire or a multiplayer with your RPG group. I personally play them solitaire because that mode fits better in my tight schedule, but it is great that you can also play them with your friends if you so wish. This adventure is for 4 characters, so you can play all the characters or you can split them among your friends that you're playing with. This adventure here is set in the old American West, and it is part of a series by Dark City Games called Legends of the Untamed West, even though I believe that this is the only title so far. And I think it is great to be able to play an adventure with such a setting. This is definitely not a setting that is well represented in RPG games, definitely not as represented, say, as fantasy or sci-fi. Maybe because the idea is that there's going to be less variety and there can be a million different monsters that you can encounter in a fantasy universe. Maybe the idea is that there are less abilities. Of course, there's no magic, no mysterious potions, no magical items here, but definitely what you lose in terms of thematic variety you can gain in terms of historical flavor. And this is pretty much one of the reasons why I was interested in playing this game. Also, personally, I'm very fond of Western movies, so I really was curious and I really wanted to try an adventure with that setting from the point of view of the protagonist. Here, the party of heroes starts from Fort Bend in Kansas at the base of the Rocky Mountains, and you have been given the mission of investigating the mysterious disappearance of a group of army soldiers that left to punish some raiders that were known to be committing mischief in the region, and these army soldiers never made it back. Nobody has heard anything about them, so you're going to try to follow their steps and figure out what happened to them. You only have a limited amount of time before the adventure is over, or better, before you lose the game. You need to figure the truth out before it is too late. There is a deadline, there is a limited amount of time that you have to resolve the adventure. In any case, let me show you the components and then we can talk a little bit about gameplay. These are all the counters that come with the game. They are mounted but uncut. You have to cut them yourself. And as you can see, there are different types of characters, different types of people and animal that will interact with you during the adventure. You have some counters that are larger than the other ones. These are used for mounts and mounted characters. Here you have the 4 brave adventurers, the 4 brave cowboys of the frontier that you will lead through the adventure. I created my own characters, then of course they were represented by these counters, and I called my characters Heenie, Meenie, Miney, and Sue. Yeah, he's a boy. Here you have a series of wild animals that are always hungry. As soon as they see you, they think, snack. So, well, they're gonna be encounters with these annoying animals here. Here you have counters representing the natives that you may encounter during the adventure. They may not all be friendly, and actually they're definitely not friendly to each other. That means that during the game you will interact with different groups of natives, and sometimes you will have to choose a side. If you ally yourself with one of the sides, then natives of another group may resent that, and you may have to face the consequences. If you're friendly to one group, the other group may not be very friendly to you. And here we have an assortment of other characters about whom I'm not going to say a single thing so that I do not spoil too many things for you. Here we have the map where you resolve combat and resolve different types of situations. Different areas of the map will be activated in different battles depending on the instructions that you receive for that battle. One thing of notice is this area here, this dark area here represents the gully, and these 2 lighter brown areas around it represent the walls of the gully. It is complicated to move through them, and definitely an important thing is that if you get caught in combat at the bottom of the gully, you cannot dodge into the sides of the gully, which makes perfect sense. Also, interesting enough, you use the map to resolve a specific type of action that you have only in this adventure, but I guess you have it in the system for Legends of the Untamed West, but for now we only have one adventure in that system. That action is running battles. You may have a side that is riding after the other side, a party is pursuing the other party that is trying to flee. In this case, you place the two parties 5 axes away from each other in the middle of the map, and each turn the parties will roll for dexterity, and the parties that best the other will decide whether to narrow or to widen the gap. And if one of the two sides manages to leave the board, then the running battle is over. During the running battle, still, people are not just running after each other, riding after each other. They can also attack each other. They can also fire. There's a penalty, of course, if you're firing from a horse that is riding. There is another penalty if you are firing on a target that is on a horse and moving. These are just interesting adjustments that you have to the system that is shared by all of the games, by Dark City Games, and of course these adjustments are welcome because they make the game more thematic. Here you have the manual with a very nice illustration on the cover, the rules, the beginning rules of the general system, with of course skills and weapons that have been adjusted to this Wild West system, and then you have a specific area for the things that apply mainly or only to this adventure. For example, there are skills that you can give to your characters for this adventure. There are rules about horses, again, a combat that involves horses, running battles, as I was saying, time. When you're traveling, you need to record the passage of time. A mounted party can visit 2 locations per day, a walking party only 1. That means that you really need to be careful with your horses. If you lose them and you find yourself walking around, things are going to be tough. Most likely you're going to fail the adventure because there is a limited amount of time by which you need to complete the adventure in order to be able to win. And if you're just walking around, well, trust me, there is a certain amount of locations that you need to visit. I doubt that you'll be able to complete the adventure if you lose your horses. Then we have the adventure itself, which is 233 paragraphs for a total of 32 minus 6 pages. That should be 26. Yes, 26. I'm not a great mathematician, so I need to think about it a little bit. And so this is not the shortest adventure that I've seen from Dark City Games. Definitely there are enough paragraphs, enough stories, situations, narrative threads to create a lot of interesting challenges for you. And well, this is pretty much it for the components. Now, let's talk about the way in which the adventure plays and the feel of the overall adventure. I found this adventure very enjoyable. The setting feels accurate. Certainly it is detailed. The descriptions of the landscapes that you are visiting are pretty detailed. They really contribute to create a convincing setting. I do not know the history of the region in the time in which the story takes place well enough to comment on whether or not the story is realistic. I will tell you though that it feels real enough. It feels real enough to be convincing, to make you interested in the story, so that you want to know more about the area, the region, the people that you're interacting. Also, to contribute to the sense of realism of the story is the fact that the story is not over formalized, over constructed in a way like you have in some fantasy adventures in which in order to be able to go through a certain door, you need to get that key, but to get that key, you need the magical item. To get that magical item, you had to go through a certain micro quest in which, in a certain way, you're unlocking narrative passages one after the other. Here it is not so much about getting the mandatory passages, going through the mandatory passages in a certain order. It is much more about exploring the region and patching together the clues. You're trying to figure out what happened to those disappeared army soldiers, and you will talk to people, and different people will give you different clues, different fragments of the story, and you had to put them all together. You follow what you hear. So in a certain way, yes, there's a progression, you're following clues, you start following certain leads, but it feels much more natural than in certain types of over-structured fantasy adventures that feel a little bit like video games. Here again, I think that it was a very good choice to write adventure that really gives a similar feel to this idea of traveling, exploring, and seeing what happens and trying to put together a truth that happened in the past, again, rather than to go through a quote-unquote quest. The combat system is, well, it is nice to see that it was adjusted to the theme. Of course, in terms of encounters, you do not have crazy variety like you would have in fantasy or in sci-fi, you know, orcs and dragons and elves and werewolves. Here, there is a more limited combination of enemies that you can encounter, but there's still enough variety, and I think the variety of enemies really then has been emphasized by the variety of environments in which you may find yourself fighting against the enemies. So actually I found that the fights in the game still had a lot to offer. There were still enough situations different from one another to present a challenge. Also, the fact that you do not have some of the things that you have in fantasy does not have to be a limitation. It can be an interesting challenge. No nice healing potions here, healing spells. Here, if you get one, that it is a serious thing. You should definitely give some medical skills to your adventures, because it is going to be hard for them to find medical help from other sources otherwise. So overall, this is an adventure that I found pretty enjoyable. The setting feels right. It really gave me the feel of a nice Western adventure. The combat system works well here. The series of combats that you have is fun to play. The adventure is interesting. Putting together different pieces of the mystery and seeing the truth emerge step by step also is a quite enjoyable experience. So I find this to be a successful adventure. Definitely one that I enjoyed playing, and one that left me hope that we will have more titles in the Legends of the Untamed West series in the future.